What is up, guys? It's Cat Food back with another video. Today I'm back with fresh Reddit content. I hope you guys enjoy.
Teachers, what's the most disturbing thing you've confiscated off a student? One of my favorite stories. So a girl was getting searched for drugs. I was the witness. My male VP was going through her purse taking things out. She had a dildo. Except at first he didn't realize. He's holding it, opening the back of it, and looking into the battery compartment, when suddenly he realizes what he is holding. Wish I had a camera. We found $15,000 in cash in the book bag of a second grader, when I was a teacher. Turns out he was a runner for the neighborhood gangs. He was 7. When I was in high school, one of the percussionists in the lowest level band class was suspended for a couple days after a dead squirrel was confiscated from his book bag. He evidently was planning on putting it in the band teacher's desk. My band teacher thought it was funny, but was otherwise generally unfazed by the news. A cannonball. It was in their locker. I guess it's not really disturbing, but it is odd. I once took a note two girls were passing back and forth. They were talking about telling the principal I raped them because they didn't like being in study hall as I didn't allow them to talk in study hall. My mom was a teacher and she had to take a lighter away from a student after he lit his test on fire. I remember there was a report of a student having a gun in his backpack, and he reached for it, but the teacher broke the kid's hand with one of the textbooks before he could get to it. My 2 female classmates had a nice idea to bring matches and rubbing alcohol to school in 8th grade. They had a plan to lure a bully girl to a secluded area outside the school, pour bottles of rubbing alcohol on her from a tree and light her on fire. The only reason they got caught is because instead of leaving their backpacks in their classroom for an assembly, they brought them to the assembly room and some kid tried going through them to steal from them. They didn't admit when caught, but like 2 to 3 years later. I'm not a teacher, but I was in a class once, and a teacher went to take a phone away from a student when he heard it vibrating. When he walked over to her he said, "Hand it over." She was so embarrassed because she wasn't using her phone. Her vibrator just started going off. A few kids laughed, but the teacher was the most embarrassed alongside the girl. 2 huge hunting knives from a 1st grader. Blades were 6 inches long and one was locked open. He had taken them from his dad's hunting gear and was showing them off in the boys' bathroom. His mom had passed when he was 4 and his dad was doing the best he could to raise and provide for 3 kids. I was with a VP as we searched a girl's bag, and we found a burner phone, $3,000 cash, and her black book of clients. She was 18, so not much we could do, but man, it made real when you consider she had a book with about 20 men's names in it and what they liked. Second weirdest was the kid who brought 3 fish he had caught that morning. He just wanted to kill them. Like didn't catch them for food, but just to kill them. A student came running to me during a break once and wanted to drag me to a class to show me something. I went along and once there, he directed me to a student's desk. There was an open notebook lying on the desk, detailing my full name, birth date, address, license plate, and other insane stuff. We immediately took her to the office after she returned. Police was called, they confiscated her phone. She had her entire album titled Teachers or Professors Don't Remember, and quite literally every single teacher she had was in there. I was in 4 pictures, some of which she took secretly in class. The others were old desk pics from my old Facebook. Was a bit creeped out, to be honest. There was a horrid smell coming from an area known as the dungeon. Just rows of lockers, so the principal and 2 teachers, lucky me, had to do a locker inspection. All the students had to open their lockers so we could check them. We get to one locker and the kid is sweating bullets. He asks us not to inspect his, but of course we do. He opens his locker, looks normal, and after the other teacher rummages through it a bit, he pulls out a bag, looks inside and starts gagging. The student 16 years old had a shopping bag full of used condoms. He told us that he kept them as proof to show people that he had an active ex-life. Student had brought a puzzle to school, but the pieces didn't match. Turned out it was a single piece from all the puzzles we kept at school, making every single one of them unsolvable. Obligatory, not a teacher, but I was in art class when my teacher told a student to throw a note she was passing around away. The note was a super graphic love letter sent by this girl's boyfriend, detailing how he'd F her shoal and a bunch of bondage type sh. The weirdest part was this girl didn't have any friends in that class. She just stood up and passed it around to the popular kids, like she was proud of it. This girl was pretty out there, so our teacher didn't even have a reaction to it at that point. A cat. One of my students brought his cat to school zipped up in his sports bag. Poor little thing. I worked as a percussion instructor, think an assistant marching band director, but just for the drummers, for several years. There was one student who was a kind of tertiary friend. He had a circle of friends, but he was on the outer edge of that circle, a bit of a loner, quiet and sensitive, really nice, a bit of a clown, intelligent and insightful, but without direction or drive. At the end of the marching season, it came time to turn in all the music binders. I was going through and making sure all the music that had been handed out had been turned back in, and I found a handwritten suicide note that had gotten left in the binder. That was about 6 years ago and he's fine, but it was the single biggest adversity I ever had to overcome in my time in the field of education. Kindergarten teacher found a needle in a boy's lunchbox. Turns out it was a used heroin needle that parents packed by accident. The boy now lives with his grandparents. The mother came in after losing custody and screamed at me for ruining her life and stealing her child. I calmly called school security and she was escorted off campus. Very bright boy is now in 2nd grade and his grandparents are an absolute delight. He is now in very loving hands. Not a teacher. A class picture fell out of a girl's desk who was in our class. This was when I was in grade 8, so 2003. It said on the back of the picture, people I want to kill. All the popular people were circled on it, and for some reason I was too. I was shocked she thought I was popular. Felt pretty cool for the first time to be included with those kids. All in all, a good day. Oh, we turned it into the teacher. They didn't do anything about it. Not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade, our teacher tripped over a kid's backpack. She was like, "What do you have in there? Bricks?" And he really did have bricks in there. My crazy mom thought it would be cool to give me a coconut and a knife for lunch one day. I got in trouble for having a knife. 2nd grade. I was just hungry. She thought it would be a cool thing to bring to school. I remember when I was in middle school, a fellow 8th grader's dad was a tattoo artist. Somehow this kid had managed to bring his dad's tattoo equipment to school, and it was confiscated when he tried to tattoo another kid whilst his friends held this kid down. Pretty sure it was going to be a forced tattoo, but a teacher was walking by and heard the screams and stopped it. I accidentally brought my camping bag to school with me once. It was the day after a 1-week camping trip and my camping pack looked very similar to my school pack. I had 2 Leathermans, a pocket knife, multiple fire starters, small game traps, box of ammo. I realized after I got to study hall first thing in the morning, that bag was not opened, or even left my back till I got home. There was a girl in my English class who always drew big titty anime girls in her notebook. I'd be grading essays and then open up her notebook and bam, some random waifu would be popping out at me. One day I noticed she was distinctly shielding her notebook from my eyesight as I walked around the class. I figured she was drawing something dirty again and just decided to ignore it. I'd deal with it at the end of class. The bell rang and I called her over and was going to talk to her about how it was inappropriate and that I had saw everything she had been doodling. Except for this time, it wasn't a doodle. It was a suicide note. It was written to a bunch of random kids on Instagram. who were evidently her only friends. She had never even met them. Well, we had a long talk about how she mattered, and it was unfair to take herself away from those who cared about her. I pointed out that a boy in the class had an obvious crush on her, and that people thought she was cool because she always dressed goth and kept to herself. I referred her to the counselor. She ended up dating the boy who had a crush on her and passing my class. Haven't seen her in years, but I hope she's doing well. We once had a middle school kids bring a turtle to school. A teacher heard kids talking about it in the hallway. She alerted me, and sure enough, in his locker we found a red ear slider in a gym bag. I kept the turtle in my office and he took it home at the end of the day. Back in high school, this girl brought a needle to school and was walking around the halls poking people with it. It was confiscated. Obviously, they were able to determine that it had not been used by her to inject herself or anyone else with anything. They did have to go around and find everyone that had been poked though, to make sure no one had any diseases. In high school, some guy wrote out a whole plan on how he was going to kill me and taped it to my locker. He actually did try to enact his plan, but I was practically a foot taller than him and overpowered him. Then I reported him to the principal, who called the police. The guy was expelled promptly. My student, but not something that I confiscated. At the end of the year last year, during finals week when class was over, and it was just tests and grade finalization, I was chatting with one of the art teachers. We started talking about a mutual student that he had, who I'll call Ryan. He was a very quiet, bright kid. Kind of weird in my classroom, was always walking around the room and barely ever sat in his seat, preferring to stand at the lab tables in the back. Sometimes I got on his case about it, sometimes I let him do his work back there. Ryan's art teacher asked if I had ever seen anything weird on his work, and I said I hadn't. She then explained to me that other teachers had noticed sketches on classwork of swastikas and other disturbing images. Ryan apparently didn't want to hand in his art journal, but the art teacher finally managed to get a hold of it and looked through it. On top of the Nazi imagery, he had drawn pictures of other kids getting killed, guns, bombs, and so on. His parents were called in, there were meetings, and so on. And I had no idea. Apparently no one thought it was a good idea to tell Ryan's science teacher that all of this was going down, and that I should be on the lookout for this kind of behavior. School administration and the other teachers left me completely in the dark about the situation, to the point where I didn't know until he wasn't my student anymore. I would never have guessed that Ryan would be thinking about this kind of stuff. What's interesting is that he always seemed to like me and would sometimes hang out after class to talk for a few minutes, but I'm openly gay and the students know I'm Jewish, so I don't know what his feelings really were. That was last year, so I don't know what's been doing on this year. I'm in the district's other high school as a sub, so I haven't seen him.
Thank you everyone that watched this video. Let me hear what your favorite part was in today's video down in the comments. Be sure to subscribe for more daily Reddit content. Drop a like if you like the video, and I'll see you all tomorrow.